Attention, citizens of Clacton. Your democratic choices are loading.
He came from Sigma, number 9, with a silver cape and policies fine. 99 flakes for 99p. Affordable housing,
Possibly 3.
across the stage in a tailored suit comes the rebel with the billionaire loot. Says he's fighting the powers that be, while 5 million questions
Orbit the sea.
One says the system's out to get him. One wears the system on his head. One promises a revolution. One wants the hand dryer moved instead. Bin face, coming down from outer space. Bin face, what a very British race. One man's a dodgy millionaire, the other literally looks like a bin. Clacton, Clacton, make some noise. Look at the state of your available choice.
Bin, 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 bin. Bin, 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 bin.
Bin face,
Recycle the promises.
recycle the spin,
Put all the nonsense.
straight in the bin.
Bin, 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 bin.
Bin face, nationalize Adel by dawn. VAR abolished before the lawn. Kebabs affordable, croissants capped. Finally a manifesto based on snacks. Meanwhile someone calls it people versus power. Television studio speaking fee hour. Crypto planets glowing bright. Nothing to declare in the satellite light. One arrived in a cosmic cruiser. One arrived surrounded by press. One has plans for interstellar peace. One has paperwork to address. Bin face, coming down from outer space. Bin face, what a very British race. One man's a dodgy millionaire, the other literally looks like a bin. Clacton, Clacton, make some noise. Look at the state of your available choice.
Bin, 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 bin. Bin, 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 bin.
Bin face.
Breaking news from planet Earth. The sensible candidate has a dustbin for a head. The anti-establishment candidate is wasting taxpayer money. Democracy is functioning normally. Please remain calm.
Who fixes Britain? Nobody knows. Who cut the price of pastry dough? Who moved the dryer? Who cleared the street? Who brought a spaceship to the Essex seaside beach? Bin face, British politics in outer space. Bin face, probably better than Nigel. 5,000 years of recyclone wisdom versus another Westminster spin. Clacton, Clacton, sing it loud. There's something strange above the crowd. Bin face, coming down from outer space. Bin face, what a very British race.
Recycle the promises.
Recycle the spin.
Whatever happens, put the nonsense in the bin. Bin, 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 bin.
Bin face.
And welcome to tonight's Autopay podcast. And Eden, oh good. We were just assuming you're having a paper bag on your head.
No. Oh my gosh, bin face.
Oh, but that popped up and I thought, oh my god, that would be such a great intro video. Yeah. And yeah, what's Rygen doing at the moment? Are you just like shed screen bin face?
No, I just got it on my phone.
What repeating what our live stream is, what's happening on there. Yeah.
How are we going?
Oh, good. So welcome to our panelists on the Autopay podcast. For a start, for us who are so far away from each other, we're all in Te Tai Tonga.
Oh wow, where are you sitting? Oh yeah, because you're in Wellington, right?
Yes, yeah.
Nice to make your acquaintance virtually, Eden.
Likewise, I am in Otautahi, Christchurch, if you're wondering.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm not too far away from you. I'm in Timaru.
Oh yes, excellent.
Yeah. Now we have a poll going on both of our YouTube streams, whether you're watching in portrait mode or landscape. Should we go to the UK to do an It's in the Ballot show for the Clayton by-election?
Yes.
And on other news, what do you think about the fact that if we cross the Atlantic to Washington, Lindsey Graham has passed away?
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Holy shit, did that just drop?
Yeah, like that's dropped today. That's dropped in the last hour.
Holy shit. Yeah, you're right. Whoa. I
Yeah,
thought it was going to be Mitch McConnell next.
No. Lindsey Graham has managed to somehow beat him to it. Yeah, so if we go on here with RNZ, basically Republican Senator Lindsey Graham died at age 71. God, he didn't manage to do a dying Feinstein.
So he
died at like 92.
So he was born July 2nd, 1955. So he died 2 days after his birthday. Nice.
Gee. What's my grandma going to sit there and say at 98?
Whereas Mitch McConnell is 84, which is actually, I wouldn't say, I mean, it's not young for the Senate, but even that's still pretty old. But like, there are senators that are even older. Like,
I know, like Winston Peters, warning.
How old was Dianne Feinstein was 90 when she passed away.
Yeah, like my grandma, who was only a couple years older than her, sat there and said, why the hell is she not retired? And like at that point, my grandma had been retired for over 30 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
I know, what an interesting day to start off the show. We find out that there's a by-election in some random place called Clacton in the UK. And the only reason why it's significantly important is because Nigel Farage was the local MP.
Yeah, he shot himself in the dick with that by-election that he called.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very concerning. I mean, it's kind of like him trying to use the public mandate as a way to get around a £5 million election donation.
I mean,
but it would have still happened even if he wins the by-election. That investigation is going to continue on anyway, and it might lead to a second by-election.
I mean, what's going to be next? Mark Lunding asking to have a referendum for whether he's a murderer or not for a New Zealand sense. Or in Texas, BTK asking to have a referendum whether he should be let out or not.
Mm-hmm.
Just if Shane Jones is lucky that he's only a list MP and wouldn't have to cause a by-election if he got done for corruption.
That's true. Well, actually, yeah. Well, I mean, he could be in the thoughts about Taito Philip Field was our only politician who actually has been charged with corruption.
Well, only one in history.
Only one, yeah. And he got booted out of the Labour Party over it as well.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get on to our first bill, which is the Community Magistrates bill. What's it called? Yeah. Better get the right one on screen. So yeah, the Community Magistrate Legislation Amendment Bill first reading, which expands the powers of community magistrates to take work off district court judges. So let's kick off with the MP for Guns, Minister for Courts, and
Deputy Leader of ACT now.
Yes, Deputy Leader of ACT. And actually, at the time the bill was done, she was Deputy Leader, Nicole McKee.
It is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website. Honourable Nicole McKee.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill be now read a first time, and I nominate the Justice Select Committee to consider the bill. Madam Speaker, too many New Zealanders are spending too long caught in the court system. For victims, delays mean waiting a year or more for a case to be resolved. For witnesses, it means uncertainty and repeated disruption. For defendants, it means cases hanging over their lives. For families, employers and communities, it means the justice system is not working as quickly as it should. Timely justice matters because justice delayed is justice denied. This government is focused on practical changes that make the courts work better. This bill is a practical reform that improves access to justice, reduces delays, and makes better use of the resources that we already have. This bill expands the role of community magistrates so that they can deal with more straightforward matters from start to finish. It will reduce unnecessary adjournments, free up district court judges to focus on more serious and complex cases, and improve the public's confidence that the justice system can deliver. Community magistrates are not new, Madam Speaker. The role was introduced in the late 1990s to increase judicial capacity to take pressure off the district court judges. They were intended to deal with lower-level criminal matters, represent the communities that they serve, and help the courts to operate more efficiently. Community magistrates generally sit part-time. They preside over certain lower-level matters in the district court's criminal jurisdiction. They are not required to hold a legal qualification, although many of them do. They bring practical experience, judgment, and community knowledge to the court system. But at the moment, they are not being used to their full potential. And too often, if a case reaches a point where a decision is needed outside of a community magistrate's jurisdiction, it has to be adjourned and transferred to a judge. That means another court event, another delay, another day off work, another round of uncertainty for victims and other court users. It also means some cases are never scheduled before a community magistrate in the first place, because everyone knows that they might have to be transferred again later on. That's not efficient, nor is it fair on court users, and it certainly is not the best use of judicial time and resource. And this bill, Madam Speaker, changes that. It will enable community magistrates to take guilty pleas for all cases except those tried in the High Court, and that means murder, manslaughter, to preside over trials and determine guilt for offences with a maximum penalty of a fine, community-based sentence, or up to 3 months imprisonment, to order pre-sentencing reports for offences being referred to a district court judge for sentencing, to make a greater range of bail decisions where the defendant has pleaded guilty before a community magistrate, and make a greater range of administrative decisions, including transferring proceedings from one district court to another and hearing unopposed limited driver licence applications. Madam Speaker, these are sensible, practical changes. They do not ask community magistrates to replace judges. They allow community magistrates to do more of the work that they were created to do so that judges can spend more time on cases that genuinely require a judge. It is expected that these changes will free up a net 5.2 district court judge full-time equivalents. Put simply, this bill is effectively 5 judges for the price of none. This is good value for taxpayers, good for court timeliness, and good for victims who have waited too long for justice. The benefits will be felt across the justice system. When cases move faster, victims get answers sooner. Witnesses are not left waiting indefinitely. Defendants are not held in limbo longer than necessary. Remand pressure can reduce as cases progress more quickly. Judges can focus on the work only they are able to do. Mr. Speaker, expanding the role of community magistrates is sensible, but it must be done carefully. The public needs confidence that the cases will continue to be dealt with appropriately and consistently. This bill does not change the sentencing jurisdiction of community magistrates. Community magistrates will still not be able to impose imprisonment or home detention. Where a community magistrate considers that either of those sentences may be appropriate, the case must be transferred to a district court judge, and that is an important safeguard. The bill also supports stronger leadership and oversight of community magistrates. Judge Moses has recently been appointed as the first Chief Community Magistrate, recognising the growing importance of community magistrates in the court system and providing judicial oversight for the role. The bill will make it so that there must always be a judge in this role. Budget 2025 also provided funding for 3 additional community magistrates and extra training to support them in their work. So, Mr Speaker, this bill is practical, it is targeted, it is common sense, and it makes better use of the community magistrates. It frees up more than 5 full-time judges worth of capacity. It helps cases to move faster, it supports victims, it reduces pressure on the district court, and it does all of that while maintaining appropriate safeguards. So I commend this bill to the House.
The question.
So, before we get down to breaking the bill, what do you take from the first glance of the bill?
Ian, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was, in terms of what she was saying, in terms of some of the challenges with the district courts and the times, and then explaining the issue, I think all those things, there's a general sense where people will be able to connect and sort of agree with. What I didn't sort of hear is actually kind of what they're necessarily doing and how that's, and I'm always really concerned about how these things are implemented, especially with this government. We know that there's lots of pressure, and usually I do get quite concerned when they start doing things with the judiciary and whether this has actually come from them. So I was just briefly searching what other kind of legal firms or people with knowledge of the courts are saying around this proposed and what risks or opportunities may come of it. But that's my first kind of glance.
Yeah, I think I need to know more. I don't really think she went into too many specifics. I mean, it doesn't sound like from what she was saying, it doesn't sound like the worst thing ever, especially considering this is an Act proposal. You know, I would expect worse from them. But I mean, I found it interesting when she said, like, oh, this will free up taxpayer resources. When, like, I don't know, personally, in the realm of like law and order, I don't care about how much it costs or how long it takes. I care about getting the right outcome.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting. One of my cousins, well, should we say my father's cousin, because it's my father's generation, Jackie is a community magistrate, and that's her job on Saturday is to do bail hearings at the Manukau District Court in Auckland. And she's been doing that for quite a number of years. So, you know, it's there is someone in the family of mine who is a community magistrate. Yeah. Okay, so breaking down the bill, here's what it is. Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill, bullet point summary, expands the powers of community magistrates to reduce the delays in the district court by allowing them to deal with more criminal matters, freeing up district court judges to focus on more complex cases. Creates a principal community magistrate, replaces the role of chief community magistrate with principal community magistrate, requires the principal community magistrate to be a district court judge, gives the role and responsibility of judicial oversight, training and leadership of community magistrates, expands the community magistrates' criminal jurisdiction, allows them to hear all Category 1 offences except continuing offences. Okay, don't know what a Category 1 offence is, but that's all right. Category 2 offences with a maximum prison sentence of 3 months or less, infringement offences, which I think will help a guy called Duncan McKee a lot. And there are bits I know about Nicole's husband. Greater powers to accept guilty pleas. Community magistrates can take guilty pleas for all offences except criminal 4 offences. For more serious Category 2 and Category 3 offences, they can accept guilty pleas before transferring the case to the district court for sentencing. Can convict defendants before transfer. After receiving guilty pleas for eligible Category 2 or Category 3 offences, community magistrates may formally convict the defendant before sending the matter to a judge for sentencing. Pre-sentence reports. Community magistrates can order pre-sentence reports before transferring case. Mandatory reports are required when home detention or community detention may be appropriate. Sentencing limits remain. Community magistrates cannot impose imprisonment or home detention. Cases where those penalties may be appropriate must still be transferred to a district court judge. Expanded bail powers. can grant bail or remand at large in additional circumstances after guilty plea, apply to certain serious offences, including drug dealing and serious Class A drug offences, provided statutory safeguards are met, such as prosecution agreements and legal representation. Case management powers can direct case management procedures for Category 1 offences, can transfer eligible proceedings to another district court location with the agreement of all parties. Limited driver's licence applications. Community magistrates may determine unopposed limited licence applications arising from Category 1 offences and Category 2 offences punishable by no more than 3 months imprisonment. Administrative changes. Updates the District Court Act and relative legislation to reflect the new principal community magistrate role. Removes updated provisions made unnecessary by expanded judiciary. Make consequential amendments across numerous acts. Transitional agreement. Existing chief community magistrate temporarily continues under the transitional provisions. Existing proceedings generally under the old rules, where the new rules apply only to the proceedings of crimes after the act has come into effect. The bill overall intends to improve the efficiency of the district court by enabling community magistrates to handle a wider range of procedural and lower-level criminal matters, reducing unnecessary adjournments while ensuring the serious sentencing decisions remain the responsibility of a district court judge.
What I'm hearing from that really, and this is, if I'm standing to be candid, and if we were in, I'd want to hear what the sector says about this, but it seems fairly kind of common sense. I think that's what they've put. That's what I've seen quoted. But regarding for those, I guess, slightly lower level offences that perhaps they're giving a bit more of a role to, as they're saying, the community magistrate, so it's less of a bottleneck. That's broadly what I'm understanding. From me, I just want to hear what kind of the courts and some people in the legal field say, because honestly, it's a bit of a bird's nest of understanding for me at the moment. But if they support it, then I think.
Sam, could you explain what a court magistrate is for those of us who aren't aware?
As a person who sits below a judge who has been deputised to do the roles of what judges are to speed up court processes, so you don't have a backlog of cases.
Okay, it's like a deputy judge, basically.
Yeah. So basically, like if you do drink driving charges, that's more likely to end up in front of a community magistrate than it would end up in front of a district court judge, especially for like first-time offences.
And do they go through the same sort of like qualifications as?
You've got to go through training for it. You don't. It's you've got to train, and you've got ongoing training. So I do know that Jackie used to come down. It would be once a year for a week in Wellington to have up-to-date training to have up-to-date training as part of her role as a community magistrate.
Okay.
And I mean, and that's on top of also her doing the JP service. I mean, other roles that community magistrates deal with is disputes tribunal. That's often heard in front of a community magistrate, but that's definitely not heard in front of a judge. So I mean, they definitely do quite a few vital roles to keep our court system going. I mean, as an example, when the disputes tribunal has turnaround time of 6 weeks, if that went through the district court judge system, I would hate to know how long that would actually take.
Yeah, okay. I mean, on the surface, this bill doesn't sound that bad. I'm interested to hear what the opposition has to say.
And this is one that's come from Jason. Do community magistrates get pay rises for the extra workload? I think they're paid on a per day basis, not on a fixed flat rate salary. Considering community magistrates are considered part-time, so their workload is a little bit different. But yes, they would be paid to cover this workload. They would, they wouldn't be expecting to do it for free. It's not like
they're much cheaper than a judge, right?
Yeah. However, many of them are justice of the peace anyway. Considering cousin Jackie is a member of the justice of the peace, as well as being a community magistrate. And I think the two are into. I think all community magistrates are justice of the peace, because justice of the peace is like a stepping stone in that. Because I know if you need court documents signed, you can get a justice of the peace outside the court system to witness them. You don't have to have that done. You don't have to have it done in front of a registrar at the courthouse. Yeah. And this has come here from Jamie. I'm concerned as less complex often younger people and the wrong choices have long-term impacts. Does it read more or less hard line? Well, I don't know. It's up to you to sit there and do it. We'll find out more as it sits there and goes through, because, I mean, it'll be interesting to see actually what happens, because, like, this is something that's a bill that, in theory, feels like it should be bipartisan. Yeah.
I think there needs to be a bit more information on this for me to have a kind of firm view of how this may impact the court system and the people going through the court system.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was an MP that had to vote on this, I think I'd probably say send it to the select committee, and my opinion, my vote on second and third reading is to be decided.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, let's move on to Camilla Bellich, Labour's Justice spokesperson and a qualified lawyer.
Is it the motion be agreed to? Camilla Bellich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleasure to be able to take a call on this bill, Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, this is something which addresses an issue that is a fundamental pillar of the justice system, and that is the premise that justice delayed is justice denied. So if no matter what the system we put in place is, if people are unable to utilise, especially in criminal law, the systems that we have due to the fact that we don't have the resourcing, then that will result in delays. And we know that there are lots of issues with delays, many different issues for the people who have been charged in terms of the pause that's on their life until an issue is resolved, and that might have implications on employment, issues for victims in terms of wanting to get justice and understanding what will happen after a crime has been, or alleged crime has been committed. And also we have practical concerns around evidential basis of many of our criminal cases is based on people being able to recall what happened, and of course with the passage of time, no matter with the best will in the world and how traumatic that is, that does dissipate over a period of time. And so we're pleased to be able to support this bill to the committee, and we generally, we'll listen to what is said in select committee, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to hear from magistrates and judges. I know that is probably not something that they usually do, but this is specifically in relation to the work that they do, and also the criminal bar, because they will have to be liaising with them as well. But generally, I think the premise of it, and thanks to the Minister for bringing a practical change to help delays in the system, I'm sure that hopefully we can find a way to implement this in a way that doesn't affect due process. And I'm sure there will be issues that will be raised around due process. Magistrates, as I understand in New Zealand law, are not required to be lawyers. They're not required to be legally trained, although many are legally trained. Many are former lawyers as well. And I understand we've got around 20 in New Zealand at the moment. So this change is really just to let them be able to hear a wider range of cases. I was just discussing with my colleague around how that works, and the difficulty that often occurs when you're deciding who is able to determine a case, because we heard from the Minister that the community magistrates will be able to hear any cases that have as a maximum penalty 3 months in prison, but they would not be able to themselves sentence for imprisonment. So there will be a bit of a tricky way of making sure that process is smooth. So, for example, if a community magistrate was hearing a case and to determine that possibly a sentence of imprisonment or home detention was appropriate, then they would have to allow a district court judge to sentence in their place. And so that would be, possibly two sentencing or two appearances in court or in front of a community magistrate, whereas perhaps under the previous system there would have been only one. However, I suppose the likelihood and the way that this particular bill would work would be the fact that many cases are determined that don't result in a home detention sentence or imprisonment. So assuming that continues, there would likely be hopefully a slightly sped up process in the district court. It was interesting reading the regulatory impact statement on this to see that actually numbers of cases in the district court have actually fallen, but the number of appearances, so kind of procedural appearances, so the work of the district court judges has actually increased. And so I suppose that this is something that will look to address that. There will be issues around, and there is issues raised around trust and confidence in the process. I think that will have to be something that we'll need to work through and assess, and I do think this is something that should probably be reviewed after a period of time once it's been in place to see if it's effective and working. And I also think there is an important role for the very busy Justice Select Committee, and it obviously is the appropriate committee for the Minister to send it to, but we do have a lot of bills, so I know that the Justice Committee will do its due diligence and make sure that this is a good bill and send it to.
Dr. Lindsay now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise on behalf.
Okay. Gee, I managed to nearly miss Camilla there. So, what's the sniff test like with Camilla's positive endorsement?
Interesting that I said I would also send it to Select Committee, and that's exactly what she's saying as well.
Yeah, I mean, usually it goes through, first, second, kind of third reading, different Select Committee assessment. It's good to see, albeit an election year, that Labor still will look at these issues and realise there's a problem to look at. So it was good to see them being not, electioneering and trying to have a go at this. And it seems like it makes kind of sense. And I've still got questions to work through and understand. And in terms of the regulatory impact assessment, being a former public servant, it's good to see them reference that and identify what they say, that free and frank analysis.
And I was going to say, you didn't end up working in justice, though.
No, I did not work in justice, but I did look at regulatory impact assessments, and they're a really important role for policy making.
I appreciate they're not trying to just ram this through under urgency.
Yeah, no, a lot of Cole McKee's bills, like this, was technically run under urgency, but it was for the first reading for the Select Committee referral. That was the only bit in the urgency motion. So, yes, it was under urgency, but it wasn't to skip Select Committee.
Okay.
Just to actually put some context in there.
That's the real problem I have whenever they use urgency, is when they try to get past the Select Committee process. But because it's like, I'm sorry, no, that's that's an important part for the public to have their say.
Exactly. Yeah, which I mean, I've got another Select Committee submission I've got to write tonight, which is on the climate tort liability bill, to sit and basically say it's unconstitutional, breaching the separations of powers.
Just real quick, since we were talking about Lindsey Graham earlier, I was just looking on Twitter. I see Meet the Press tweeted about 8 hours ago that they were meant to have him on their show tomorrow, and so everyone's replying to that tweet with like a Ouija board, the Batman, the Does He Know meme, and someone found a tweet from Lindsey Graham from about a decade ago saying, "If we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it." And someone retweeted that with like a monkey's paw.
Oh, what a sad way to sit there and go.
And last one, it's not been a good week for senators or would-be senators with the name Graham. With Graham Plattner as well. Anyway.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, back to the show.
While we're going to shift from Graham's to Lawrence and I'm from the Greens, and we'll see if the Greens actually support it or not.
Half of the Green Party of Aotearoa to support the Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill to Select Committee. I want to first also want to acknowledge the Honourable Nicole McKee as well for allowing us the opportunity to have a conversation around this particular bill as well. Now, I think across the House, this is something that we agree that when it comes to access to justice, the idea of court timeliness is an important one, and we have seen a number of those bills coming through the House that the Green Party has supported on, including the High Court changes, including the Judicature Timeliness Amendment Bill, and also the Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill. I think there are a couple of interesting things to touch on in this case, and I think that both the previous two speakers has covered a number of them, but just to sort of highlight some of the key areas, we do see that community magistrates can fulfill an important function in our legal system when it comes to the ability to undertake more case reviews, the ability to hear more bail cases, and basically alleviate some of the burdens we see on the district court judges and the district court in general. The previous speaker, Camilla Bellich, has already mentioned that it's interesting in the regulatory impact statement to see that although the number of cases in the district court has fallen, I believe, by about 15%. over the last 6 years, but there's still significant delays that impedes access to justice for complainants and defendants. And we're hoping that this is something that potentially could move in a direction that allows there to be more timely access to justice. However, of course, for us in the House, this is where, although we have this understanding of the principle of comity that both the legislature, the executive, and the legislature and judiciary in particular in this case are independent and should be operating independently, their expertise on this area and ability for us as a House to hear, as a select committee to hear from experts is an important one. So we do encourage people from, in that case, from the judiciary or those who are involved within the community magistrate system to actually submit as a part of, to the best of their ability, or legal experts who are involved in that to submit during the select committee process, so that way we're able to hear sort of a balanced view of how this works in practice. Again, very few of us in the House have had that level of in-depth experience in the judiciary. The other couple of things I want to touch on, Mr. Speaker, with regard to this bill is when we are looking at this, and I think the previous speaker, Givealittle, has already mentioned that community magistrate doesn't necessarily have to be trained lawyers or have that kind of legal background, although it is preferred and many of them do. But also I think another important angle when we're looking at from a select committee perspective that we should keep in mind is the fact that across all levels of our criminal justice systems, we do see an overrepresentation of Māori, we do see an overrepresentation of Pacifica, and this is something that the Ministry of Justice, through a number of hearings, whether it's Estimates Week or Annual Review Week or long-term insights briefing, etc., is one of the key focus for both the Ministry of Justice but also for the Justice Select Committee. So I think this is an important moment when we're looking at the broader landscape of the judiciary, which includes community magistrates, is as we're seeing some of these cases manifest, what again, with the expanded scope of power comes with the expanded scope of responsibility, and with that, what then is the requirement or considerations around cultural competency and culturally appropriate advice or judgments or consideration of cases, whether it's bail, whether it's criminal, whether it's others, before the community magistrates. I think this is something that we would like to hear more about during the select committee process, and particularly from officials on how that side is going to work and what are some of their resources and considerations has already been given. So with that, Mr. Speaker, the Green Party does support this bill, and we look forward to considering it in the Justice Select Committee.
Tom Rutherford. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I mean, from the opposition, from my understanding, the questions are they qualified enough to make good judgments aligned with what it would be if it was, I guess, a court judge, district court judge. And I think that's kind of somewhat fair, but it'd be good to know that. That's where I'd see the regulatory impact statement perhaps offering some of that. And that training, I think, is a really fair point. If there is, I guess, not just added hours, and I saw that comment about being compensated, which is good, but if that scope of decision making also brings in scope of other areas where they may not be culturally competent for that, if there's training, then they need to be supported with that.
Yeah, I'm about to, about to Google.
Sorry, I missed at the end here. Did he say the Greens are going to be supporting it to select committee or voting it again?
Supporting it to select committee.
Okay, all right.
Oh, well, this is interesting. So there are currently 18 community magistrates in New Zealand. So where does Jackie fall into it? Because on the community, full family court associates, and I'm actually. Pretty sure, Jackie, that's what she does as community magistrate. Otherwise, I'm going to have to sit there and go and see Grandma because she's not on the community magistrates list. Oh, that's interesting. One of the Independent Hut United candidates was it? I think is. Oh no, that first name doesn't match up. The last name does, but it doesn't match up with the first name of a candidate who stood for office in 2022. What, yeah, I thought Jackie was community magistrate. Maybe it's just Justice of the Peace that she is.
The motion to move to select committee makes sense. I mean, that's where things can be tested and pulled apart a bit more with public engagement, but also MPs scrutinising it more. So it seems like a sensible.
Yeah. Yeah. On the JP register, cousin Jackie's on it. So yeah, on the JP register she's there, but it doesn't state that. It doesn't state about whether there's any other qualifications that goes with it. It's just a phone number, which is the same phone number I have to ring her. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see what comes from Tom Rutherford, and we'll see if it's going to be a seat warmer speech, or is it actually going to be something substantially decent?
Great to see some universal support coming from across the House on what is really a very simple and fixing an anomaly around community magistrates being underutilised in our justice system and expanding the powers they have so they can hear more cases in the district court end to end, which is ultimately going to free up district court judges to progress more complex trial work. So I commend it to the House. Jamie.
And I would sit there and say there that Tom Rutherford really didn't give a decent speech to sit there and says that it's just, I support the speech and stand down.
So quick, I didn't even have time to go turn my heat pump on and get back in time.
No. I would call that a seat warmer speech.
I mean, at least he wasn't blabbering on for too long and saying nothing. I mean, if you got nothing to say, just get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect the party would say these are the bills that we support and these are the bills that we don't, and you're the spokesperson for this, so you offer a position, and he's just keeping it short.
Well, it's interesting enough. He is the chair of the Justice Select Committee now.
So, Sam, will you be uploading this as a specific clip, this speech?
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. We definitely put that on there so that people can sit there and see how much our MPs sit there and take to it. So people can sit there and know who these MPs are.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what Jamie Arbuckle's got to say from New Zealand First.
Thank you. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to support the Community Magistrates Legislation Amendment Bill. As we know, community magistrates were created in the late 1990s, but they remained underutilised. New Zealand First has always campaigned on getting tough on crime and fixing the flaws in our justice system. I look forward to the Select Committee, the submissions on this bill. I commend it to the House.
Another one. Who was that sitting next to him, by the way? I didn't recognise that person.
That is Dr. David Wilson, MP, the person who replaced Tanya Unkovich.
Oh, so New Zealand First MP.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I remember she stood aside, didn't she?
Yeah, it's yeah. What would you like to say about Jamie's speech, apart from that it was a state warmer?
It was the speech of all time.
Yeah, actually, I'll take a look at the Hansard. How many words was Jamie Arbuckle's speech? Okay, that was an all right number. I'm estimating it's about 30 to 40 words.
Wow, he just said they support it, basically.
Oh, no. That's good. Just wait till when you see the next one.
Okay.
Yes. And for those who are in the Air Force, you call him Sir. For the rest of us, he's Tim Costley.
Speaker, fixing the basics and building the future. Law and order is so important that we take it seriously, but move these cases through the court. I commend it to the House.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
So how the hell are we meant to actually, put it this way. The way he's saying it, it's like, this is like how quick they want the cases to go through the courts.
I can understand why.
I can understand the utility of a speech like that in, that kind of.
Yeah, I mean the government, they're partners in the coalition, so I can see why they're keeping it sort of somewhat short and sweet, and they wouldn't say anything.
The most interesting thing is, usually when it's a national MP as the minister in charge of the speech, you get a decent rundown from the national MP. When it is a junior coalition partner, such as ACT in this case, or New Zealand First, you typically get a good speech at the start, but then you get the first national speech is a seat warmer. It's so frustrating. Well, who Eden, unfortunately, will not be opponent with in Christchurch Central. You got Duncan Webb.
Honourable Dr Duncan Webb.
Oh, kia ora, Mr Speaker. I do think it's worth spending a little more time reflecting on what this bill does. And as you've heard, we do support this bill, but there will be some important points to consider at Select Committee. Community magistrates are not legally qualified. When they were at their inception, they were instituted as a model of essentially community-based justice. That is to say, people who knew the community, were part of the community, making decisions about minor offending within that community. And, you know, I endorse that view, but we do need to be cautious. So we are supporting this with some caution about expanding the jurisdiction of magistrates to more serious offending. And I will be interested to interrogate exactly what kind of decisions the magistrates can make in respect of what kind of offending, because justice delayed is justice denied, but an outcome which is unjust is also problematic. And so, whilst we can train, I'm not, you know, lawyers aren't the be-all and end-all of the justice system. Don't get me wrong there, but we can train up non-lawyers to have some legal capacity, and we see that in the disputes tribunal. Although, in fact, most of them are lawyers. And in fact, if you look at community magistrates, the fact of the matter is, and I'd be interested in the statistics on this, many of those are lawyers as well who are doing this essentially as a side gig or a retirement gig or something along those lines. Now, I do think that in terms of community magistrates directing traffic, I think that is a good idea. That is to say, doing case management, preparing things for trial and addressing some bail hearings. That is a good thing. I think the regulatory impact statement's a little ambitious, or it perhaps overestimates the impact of this. For example, it suggests on page 21 that there will be fewer people on remand in prison as a result of this. I find that highly unlikely given the jurisdiction of the community magistrates. The material, the cases that go to community magistrates are by definition low-level offending where imprisonment is almost, it's very, very unlikely indeed. So it's unlikely that by speeding up these cases in particular, you're going to be taking people off remand. They'll certainly be on bail and therefore, under the supervision of corrections in a sense, but in police. But in fact, the remand is unlikely to really have much of an impact. In terms of, if you like, the professionalisation of community magistrates, I think that's a good thing. There's the suggestion or the intention that there be a chief magistrate by law and that person be a district court judge. So that's a very senior lawyer. And the good thing about having a chief of a bench in that sense is that they can give direction and have a certain degree of mana. And so when people aren't getting things quite right, they can have that chat and say, well, look, that's not how we deal with people, or that's not an appropriate process, and that's actually a really good thing. And the head of bench, chief community magistrate, will be networked with other heads, so they'll be no doubt in touch with the head of the district court and other judicial officers. So it's actually about creating a structure that builds capacity. So community magistrates, they are a good thing, and I guess the expansion of them, we've got to be careful that we're not doing this simply because it's cheap. But at the same time, I'm aware that community magistrates are remunerated on a very modest scale. It's certainly not what, anywhere near what a judge is paid. It's a bit more than an honorarium. I think it's around $450 a day, but I'd be educated on that. And you see that that's not a huge amount for that kind of work. But a good initiative that we'll support and give it a good working over. Yet again, another piece of legislation going to the Justice Select Committee.
Yeah, I like what he said there about not supporting it just because it's cheap. That's what I was saying earlier. But yeah, I think what Duncan said there makes sense. I mean, being a former lawyer, he knows I think
he's a practicing lawyer still.
Oh yeah, well he's an MP.
Yeah.
Didn't think that was a thing.
I fully support a lot of what he said there. I've been lucky enough to meet him a number of occasions.
You're running for a seat, aren't you?
Yeah, so he's standing down at the end of this election as well, but I've still met him on a number of occasions. But I think it's a really measured approach, and so it's good to see them still support it. The question around jail sentencing, I think, is one question mark that I'd like to see a bit more, when it was magistrate having the ability of sentencing up to, I believe, was it 3 months? I do
cases with a maximum sentence of 3 months.
Yeah, I definitely have question in terms of that line being crossed and the role of the magistrate. I think once people get in the system, it is, that is quite a significant decision, and that could impact people's lives beyond, I think, what the mandate of community magistrates is. But broadly, I supported, a lot of what Duncan said.
So you have the likes of Duncan McKee with his speeding tickets there, not what do you call it, a drink driver on the road. And I won't compare any MP's spouses to drink driving because hopefully, fingers crossed, they don't. Actually, no, we can compare an MP who got done for drink driving, Givealittle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see what actually, screw that. The next two national speeches are seam warmers, and I don't think Dan's going to be anything productive on what he's going to sit there and say for a speech. So let's go on to the Emergency Management Bill number 2.
That sounds much more exciting.
Now, actually, before we go,
just my only question though with this bill is, did Te Pāti Māori vote on it?
They didn't even have a speech in it. But let's go for the vote. There was no division, so it was just, is the motion agreed to, and it was agreed to be referred to select committee. So there was actually no vote division on it.
Okay, so there was no party vote called.
No, but which means everyone's technically agreed. I don't think Māori would actually be against this.
Yeah, I don't.
I think they could be either way. I think they could really be questioning the impact of how it could exacerbate Māori.
But I can see they would prefer to have a Māori offender in front of a Māori community magistrate than in front of a Pākehā district judge.
Is there Māori magistrates though?
Probably would be. I mean, we've got Māori judges. I mean, it's likely to be that. I mean, we're not that backward. I mean, you won't be able to tell by the names on there, but I mean, if you look at some of the last names that are on there, they are Māori. They are Māori or Pacific Island last names do exist in the list of community magistrates that are on there. And I mean, and that's just the ones who are obvious. You also have the ones who, possibly are that you won't know about because they've got a non-Māori last name as well. So, I mean, as I said, that's the only one in there. Like, there's one of them that looks like a Samoan last name of the names that are in there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question, if I put my sort of Māori hat on and connection, it's not necessarily whether people are Māori working. For me, there might be Māori working within that community magistrate. It's whether there's a Māori system that enables a Māori approach of doing it. And I think with this being a community magistrate, I understand it's quite a localised. There's people within that community, as long as there's one of the communities where they work closely with some of the iwi in that area, then I think they'd be fully, I mean,
exactly. And I wonder how many are put forward by local iwi. You should say, you'll be right for this role, you should go for it. Yeah. Okay, and before we go to the emergency management bill, let's read, was it Lord Alex's super chats? Just wanted your opinion to let your listeners know, RNZ today reported that the Hutt City Council gas advertised tenders for the Cross-River Link, which includes consultants, engineers, and management. Comments? Either you guys probably have no clue what the hell the Cross-River Link is.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this.
I think you should live in the hut, but I don't know what this is about.
Yeah, I know what it's about, but that's an update on that one. Thanks for that, Alex.
Could they please send through like a brief update of what that is? Maybe we can send something back. I'm mindful they sent through a super chat, so they want a response.
Yeah.
Just chuck it in the chat. You don't have to do a super
Just
chat.
give Big Wiley Van Erden a ring. He's a candidate for Hutt South. He should know. It's the third time he's standing, actually.
I mean, Sam, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Sam. Like, you appreciate the super chats, but it's not necessary to.
Well, I was going to say, we with the poll of the Clampton by-election.
Oh, yes.
Where has that poll gone? I can't find the poll. Well, that's interesting. However, there's people who literally are saying we should hold it, if people say we should hold it, can someone please super chat us $20 so that we can pay for a UK voice over IP phone line for 2 months so that we can run the show?
Oh, we're halfway there already. You got $10.
I want new super chats. Okay, let's get off for a guy.
Sorry, would you be trying to like contact someone in the UK to like get live updates on that?
No, so candidates can ring us without having to do an international phone call.
Oh, okay.
Because it'll look like a scam.
Okay.
Whereas if it had a localized phone number, at least that sits there and means it's a local. It's a national phone call, not an international phone call to ring us.
Yeah, true. I would have just like said like if anything, just like live react to like whatever reporting's happening like with the election results.
Yeah, it depends what we're covering. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
let's get on to Mark Mitchell.
Can I seek leave to correct 2 votes taken during the committee stage of the offshore renewable energy bill in order to correct the Green Party's vote on the closure motion for part 4, which should have been 14 votes opposed.
That's not Mark
Honourable
Mitchell.
Dr Megan Wood's table amendments to AP number 571, which should have been cast as 14 in favour.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? There appears to be none. The record will be corrected accordingly. I call on Government Order of the Day number 14.
Emergency Management Bill number 2. Mr Speaker.
Second reading. The Honourable Mark Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I present a legislative statement on the Emergency Management Bill number 2.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website. The Honourable Mark Mitchell.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Emergency Management Bill number 2 be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, while you're on the seat, I just wanted to acknowledge you as a member of the National Party backbench when we were hit by the awful Christchurch earthquakes. I got to observe your tireless work as Emergency Management Minister, leading the recovery for Christchurch. And I just want to reflect and mourn on those that were lost, but also now recognise that Christchurch is a thriving, city that is a joy to visit and to see how far they've come since that event. And I want to acknowledge you because I got a front row seat that helped inform me in terms of what I needed to do when I took on the role of Emergency Management Minister. So thank you for that. I'd like to thank the Governance and Administration Committee for its work to consider this important piece of legislation. I'm pleased to see the committee was unanimous in its recommendations. This reflects the collaborative cross-party approach that we need to strengthen our emergency management system. In my view, like national security, emergency management should be bipartisan, and I want to thank all of the parties that have worked hard and had input into the development of this bill. I also want to acknowledge the submitters on the bill. Their input has improved the bill and will also feed into its implementation and other operational improvements. Emergency management is relevant to every person in New Zealand, and submitters' insights are important to supporting the whole of society approach to emergency management we need to adopt as a country. The government's objectives for reform are to strengthen the role of communities and iwi Māori in emergency management, provide for clear responsibilities and accountabilities at the national, regional and local levels, enable a higher minimum standard of emergency management, minimise disruption to essential services, and ensure agencies have the tools to do their jobs effectively when an emergency happens. The majority of submitters supported this intent. Where submitters sought changes, it's clear the Select Committee has given those views careful consideration and in many cases has recommended changes to the bill as a result. These amendments have strengthened the bill and the government will be taking them forward. There are some changes I want to highlight because I see them as particularly helpful in supporting improvements on the ground. The bill, as reported back, extends civil liability protections to official responders when they're taking precautionary actions immediately before an emergency. These protections will also cover the likes of volunteers and civil contractors when they're acting under official direction. Concern about civil liability before a state of emergency is declared should not create hesitation to act, because hesitation can result in avoidable damage. At worst, it may cost lives. I welcome the Select Committee's recommended changes on this issue, and I thank the submitters who raised it. The committee has also recommended creating a formal link between regional emergency management plans and the long-term planning process under the Local Government Act. Good planning is fundamental to driving action on the ground, across the 4 Rs of risk reduction, readiness, response and recovery. While there is already an expectation that local authorities will implement their emergency management responsibilities through long-term plans, making this link explicit and clarifying how a multi-council planning process should flow into individuals' councils and their long-term plans was important. Emergency management committees are intended to achieve economies of scale and integrated management of hazards and risks, but they can only be successful if all councils play their part. Linking regional emergency management plans and long-term plans will ensure that committees' decisions translate into action. This change reinforces a key shift the bill is making to put more emphasis on the emergency management role of individual councils, and related changes include creating specific roles for regional emergency management committees and their local authority members, making mayors primarily responsible for declaring states of local emergency and recovery transition periods within their own districts, requiring every territorial authority to have a district controller and district recovery manager with a clear line of accountability to the council's chief executive, and giving territorial authority chief executives an explicit mandate to coordinate resources provided by other agencies in the lead up to and during an emergency over that longer term recovery. In late October last year, severe weather events coincided with the local body elections. Because new mayors had not been sworn in yet, I needed to declare states of local emergency over Southland and Canterbury. The committee has recommended a sensible change to address this gap, enabling mayors to be sworn in early on a temporary basis to declare a state of emergency or transition period. This will enable local declarations to continue to be made locally and avoid potential delays in the emergency disruption communications if the emergency is disrupted because of communications between the affected council and the minister. When it comes to improving our resilience to emergencies, this bill is only part of the picture. Councils also hold many tools to address specific hazards under the planning, building and biosecurity legislation. To name just a few, like under the current Act, emergency management committees are expected to use these tools to support their emergency management responsibilities. I'm pleased to see the Select Committee has recommended making the connection between these responsibilities clearer by creating a requirement for emergency management committees and councils to consider whether functions, duties and powers and other relevant legislation would help meet their emergency management responsibilities. New Zealand is one of the most exposed countries to natural hazard risk in the world. I'm sure I don't need to convince the House about the need for a strong emergency management system. This need is reinforced by every severe weather event, let alone when we consider our most serious risks like the Alpine Fault. It's critical we have legislation that sets us up to manage these risks. At its core, New Zealand's approach to emergency management is based on three key principles. 1, we consider all hazards, natural and man-made. 2, we manage the risk from these hazards by taking action across the 4 Rs: risk reduction, readiness, response and recovery. And 3, all parts of society have a role to play in emergency management: central government, local government, communities and businesses, iwi and hapu and individual households. Overall, this bill will better enable our emergency management system to achieve this intent and deliver the improvements identified through past inquiries and reviews. For that reason, I want to thank again the Select Committee and all of the submitters for the critical role you have played in improving this bill. The Emergency Management Bill number 2 will provide stronger foundations for New Zealand to meet the growing risk we face as a country, and I commend it to the House.
This bill here feels like it's in Mark Mitchell's prime.
Yeah, seems reasonable. Mark Mitchell's an interesting cat because I'm not a fan of him in his like whole as what is it, Minister of Police is he?
Yeah, he's Minister of Police.
Yeah, because he's like one of those big like tough on crime kind of people, which is just not an approach I'm a big fan of. But when he's doing like emergency management stuff, I actually think he's not too bad in that role.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that one. I think he's done a really good job for emergency management, and he did a great job having to pick up with all the declarations of emergency stuff that he had to step in with because of when because it was in the for local government after election day. There was no caretaker role for mayors or for councillors. It is your job is finished and it's off to the new administration. Even that, and that is while you're in that period of where the votes having to be counted, the specials, all that sort of stuff. The old administration has gone. Like there's no caretaker period for the mayor at all. It's just basically that's it. It's quite a weird one because the new mayor and new councillors are elect. They're not sitting councillors yet until they have their inaugural general meeting, which is after the writs have been returned. And like an interesting part in there at last local body elections, because there was a recount in Porirua City Council couldn't have their first council meeting until the 26th of November, where most councillors were swearing in their new councillors around the 26th of October.
Just a couple of things on this emergency management. It seems like reasonable ironing out a few kinks in the current legislation, which seems to make sense in the broader planning. I guess two areas. So just to note that my hometown in February was in a state of emergency in Little River, or Wairua, which is where I also have whakapapa. And yeah, it was definitely an example of where the cuts in funding is being quite obvious. And I was just looking at how they were impacted towards the end of last year when that kind of I guess first large round of cuts was. And so yeah, Niwa was affected with that. And I would also just like to acknowledge Takahanga Kaikoura Marae that hosted in one of the RNZ reports I saw, I think up to 140 people. I think the numbers are sort of bouncing around, but quite a good place for communities to go to quite fast, and there's often food. One thing that I've seen in lots of the disasters following the news is that they're often not supported or compensated afterwards, so they have this key role. And so I guess there are two quite clear areas where NEMA and the minister, I'd like to see them acknowledge that and offer that support for what Marae do in those states of emergencies and how they react really fast, because without that there'd be lots of people not necessarily be able to go anywhere. And then also just the further funding, because we know that there's going to be lots more of these kind of state of emergencies and broader challenges, so we need more people on deck. But common sense, but in terms of better efficiency in planning, so I do support that, but I'd also just like to highlight other areas in the emergency management that I think could be improved.
Okay, so let's break down what's actually come from the amendment papers here. Okay, so the emergency management bill, so the amendments they made to the bill, they are the commencement for consultation with disproportionately affected communities, so engagement starts immediately after royal assent. They brought forward the provisioning, allowing lead agencies to be identified early in national emergency management plans. The purpose and definition clarifies the purpose of the Act so that it focuses specifically on emergency management rather than general well-being. Updates definition of disproportionately affected communities. Change epidemic to pandemic. Add major transport incidents as an example of an emergency, which would be quite with the fact, like at the moment, the fact the road between Kaikoura and Cheviot is currently closed because the road ain't there. So that would be able to, so that would be something that would actually line up for there. Strengthen recognition of iwi and Māori participation in recovery plans. Emergency management committees or EMCs allow multi-member EMCs to appoint associate members with special expertise. Associate members can participate and be remunerated, cannot declare emergencies, cannot be chair committees, cannot exercise emergency powers reserved for elected members. Clarified how EMC responsibilities interact with existing local government participations. National Controller and Recovery Manager requires appointment to be suitably qualified and experienced. So, probably Alf Stewart off Home and Away would fit in that category. Allows deputies to be appointed, allows authority delegates to perform functions while accountability remains with the controller or recovery manager. Local government requires councils to continue functioning to their fullest extent possible during emergencies. Allow a mayor elect to temporarily exercise declaration powers before official swearing in following elections. Lead agencies, clarify who leads if no agency has been designated. Clarify how responsibilities can be transferred between agencies. Enable planning for emergency involving multiple hazards. Essential infrastructure, update definitions, electricity transmission/distribution, gas transmission/distribution, and water services. Requires the minister to publicly explain reasons for recognising or changing essential infrastructure providers. Tighten safeguards around ministerial exemptions. require publication of exemption decisions and reason. National Emergency Management Strategy, make the strategy secondary legislation, require the strategy to be presented to Parliament for confirmation, require consultation with iwi Māori, rural communities and disproportionately affected communities. Regional planning requires consultation with agencies and infrastructure providers affected by the regional plans, require Minister to give reasons when directing a regional plan review, improve consultation requirements for sectors response plans. Emergency declarations, clarify overlapping national and local emergency declarations, clarify overlapping transition periods, simplify Parliament recall during national emergency. Parliament during emergency, create a faster process allowing the Speaker, with the Prime Minister's agreement, to relocate Parliament if Parliament's buildings is unsuitable, and replace the existing Constitutional Act mechanisms with a more streamlined process. Emergency powers, extend certain powers to the National Controller, clarify when local controllers may exercise powers, improve powers relating to animal welfare during the emergency and transition period, modernise search warrant provisions, align them with the search and surveillance of 2012. Official information, make it explicit that the Local Government Information and Meetings Act, also known as LGOIMA, applies to emergency management committees, coordinating executive groups, controllers and recovery managers. Compliance orders, allow amendments to compliance orders during appeals in certain circumstances, clarify appeal process, introduce a defence of reasonable excuse for failing to comply with a compliance order. Civil liability, extend legal protections to officials taking preventive or precautionary action before an emergency is formally declared. Compensation, confirm compensation may be eligible for large damage caused by preventative emergency action. Double the compensation cap for personal property from $20,000 to $40,000. Expand who's may be liable for compensation. Provide clear guidance for the courts when determining compensation. Penalties, increase maximum fine for breaches of the regulation from $500 to $2,000 for individuals and up to $10,000 for organisations. And new Part 6, add amendments to other legislation, including the Constitutional Act of 1986, new emergency processes for relocating Parliament, and the Local Government Act 2022, links regional emergency management plans with council's long-term plans, limit consultation where matters have already been consulted on for regional emergency management plans, add further legislation to Schedule 2 as legislation relevant to emergencies, and also committee notes, New Zealand First supports the bill but argues emergency declarations should be able to cover areas smaller than a council ward, which actually that's quite interesting because I remember one time we had in Wellington we had a state of emergency declared for one street, which was the Esplanade, and the Esplanade that became a Pharaoh parade, ironically done by New Zealand First MP, then Mayor of Wellington, Andy Foster.
Yeah.
And the Green Party has also supports the bill, but sought stronger provisions around climate adaptation, Māori and community resources, and protection for disabled and rural communities.
Seems like a list of lessons learned.
That's a very big amendment to a bill. Like I've not read a supplementary report. Now that's just bullet points. But I've not read one that has had that's the bullet points in summary done by AI. That's not what the actual report says. That's just a summary.
Mm.
Yeah. Comments?
Not sure. This is kind of a little bit out of my ballpark.
Just I mean, doing a good job.
And when there's a state of emergency and when stuff needs to get done, I think restrictions in the law is probably one of the few times where we don't want people on the ground to be held up by what's happening in Wellington in terms of the legislation and the framework that enables them to get stuff done. It's I think presumably it does sound like a lessons learned kind of list from some of them. I don't know about all of them, but it's in that time of need, I think it is really important to have this feedback loop and to iron out some of these areas, because there's some quite niche points of where I guess it has sort of failed or there has been issues. But no, I mean, it seems reasonable. I don't know how many bullet points there were, Sam, if you...
Oh, God. I'm not prepared to count it.
Ballpark? I
would say there would have been 30.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't include the little random bits I added, like the ward part from New Zealand First, which is interesting because actually Andy Foster's actually on that committee. And yeah, he was the mayor of Wellington who declared the state of emergency that was literally, basically, effectively a set of streets that ran along coastline. Yeah, which I can see exactly why he's doing. I mean, he has 30 years of local government experience, so he's not exactly, he's actually a very experienced local body politician. Probably one of New Zealand's most experienced actual, councillors and mayors that have been out there. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to Camilla Bellich, who is, I believe she's the next person to sit there and speak. I think it's Camilla. Kick it off.
Nā koe ki te māngau o te whare otira i te tuatahi i roto i te reo Māori, tēnei te tangi aroha ki te tuahine parekora horomia i hoki atu ki te kōpū o te whenua i te tūrei ko Pahuri. Rā reira, Isabel, haere atu rā, ka nui te aroha ki te whānau pani. Hoki mai kia tātou te hunga ora, tihei mai ora i te whānau. First of all, I do want to acknowledge the whānau in Wairarapa who have once again recently been flooded. Ka nui te aroha kia koutou. And also big mihi to you, Minister, for your kōrero this morning and reinforcing how good it is that we have reached bipartisan agreement on this very important issue that affects all of our communities across Aotearoa. And I also want to acknowledge both you and my colleague Camilla, who worked together on improvements of this bill. Which whānau, as the Minister has laid out, is about modernising and strengthening our civil defence emergency management framework. I have acknowledged the work that our former spokesperson, Camilla Bellich, has done on this. And so Labor do support this bill with a couple of reservations or recommendations. Obviously, it's been great to hear the Minister acknowledge the value of iwi and hapu in emergency management and recovery. And while it's great to see that this bill creates statutory obligations to engage iwi Māori, Labor would have preferred and would have acknowledged the value of iwi and hapu from the design, partnership to delivery of these processes. I want to talk a bit about what iwi involvement means and hapu involvement means. We've talked a lot in this House about the value, across parties actually, which is awesome, about the value of marae facilities in these scenarios. And so I want to talk about what that actually means in a community sense. It was great to be able to take Camilla, when she was spokesperson, to Hauiti, where they were still having activities, recovery-related activities in their community. Not only the exhaustion of the resource, which is therefore taken out of commission for the rest of the community, who now have to think about where they're going to have their tangi, where they're going to have their birthday celebrations. But it's also the exhaustion on the whānau who have to man those facilities while also fulfilling their full-time jobs and other community responsibilities they have. That's what we're talking about here. But they do it because they know their communities, they're well connected with the regional sedums and of course with NEMA. It's a beautiful model, and that's why we would strongly like to see in the future iwi and hapu acknowledged as partners, as decision makers, as well as key deliverers of these services. The other point about that is it's not just iwi for iwi locally. That network stretches out across the motu, and descendants of iwi will support with things like Starlink, which we saw, but we'll talk a bit more about infrastructure later. It's also the ko tō raurau, ko tāku raurau, ka ora ai te iwi mentality, where other iwi networks come in to support, not just financially and with resources, but with training and manpower. Another area of this bill, very important and Labor supports strongly, is the progress in strengthening the resilience of essential infrastructure. One of the greatest honours I've had in my life so far, Mr Speaker, was to serve as a volunteer member of our local civil defence, the Rangitokia Civil Defence team, during Cyclone Gabriel. Many of you will remember that during Cyclone Gabriel, the East Coast was cut off in every sense. Power went down, our roads in and out were cut off. We had no internet, no phone line. But I must give a big mihi to good old Radio Ngāti Pro, whose 585 AM frequency was still connected and still the only means of communication for the important local and national comms we were getting in terms of safety for our whānau. Other than that, it was just good old door knocking. So absolutely, we support building resilience into all future investments in our infrastructure throughout Aotearoa. The bill also updates the governance arrangements for our regional emergency management organisations, including renaming civil defence emergency management groups as emergency management committees. I think a name is a name, whatever we call them. I just urge us all that we remain genuinely focused on locally led and locally driven. Another slight point of difference is governance. Labor believed that the strongest emergency management system is one that empowers regions while ensuring national coordination where necessary. This bill shifts the balance towards centralisation. It introduces new ministerial powers, binding national rules and compliance orders enforceable through courts. While there will certainly be occasions where national leadership is essential, we must remain connected to our local leaders who know their communities so well, they know their rivers so well, they know their whenua so well, they know their roads so well, and they know their bridges so well. A resilient system should trust local expertise as much as central authority. We've talked about bipartisanship, and I just want to acknowledge all the amazing people, both in paid roles and voluntary roles across Aotearoa, who do a great job in keeping our communities safe. What I've observed is that during my visits around Aotearoa is that while resource levels may differ, responses may differ, what is absolutely key is that everyone has a really strong local connection, local leadership, and I want to acknowledge too the training and professional development that has gone on throughout our communities. It's really awesome to see that when we get those heavy rain warnings, people are stood up, the Facebook pages are going crazy, and everyone knows what they should do. And I'm also pleased to say people are taking the warnings much more seriously, because we know all too well the damage of what we're calling, sadly, our new norm. So, Mr. Speaker, I do want to conclude once again in reinforcing the value of having iwi and hapu as part of the design, as part of partnership in this, not merely because they are so well connected in some of our most isolated communities, but they are connected across the whole emergency management network. They have already invested significantly in resourcing communities, not just with contributing to mobile civil defence units in containers, but also in supporting the professional development of people who live in the communities that are affected by these each and every day. While I actually really love this portfolio, Mr. Speaker, because while we go into communities, we go in often without our party hats on. We see people going through some of the most vulnerable times of their lives, packing up their worldly belongings at the end of their driveways while their houses are filled with silt and water. And while it's absolutely devastating, it is wonderful that we as a parliament stand by our people. And it's also wonderful because we also see the best of humanity at these times. And so we see communities pulling together, and that's why Labor are happy to make progress on this bill. We probably would have been happy to see all right through to the third reading under urgency, Mr. Speaker, because we understand that this is beneficial for Aotearoa. As I said, could there be tweaks made? Absolutely. But I do want to acknowledge the mahi that has gone on to make the advancements that we have before us today. So once again, a big mihi to all the whānau still recovering out there, a big mihi to all the visionaries in this House who want to look at building resilience as we progress our response, our responses to emergency management, and also a massive mihi to all our volunteers who continue to upskill, who continue to train so that you are in the best position to serve your communities. Communities who want to stay where they're from because it's beautiful and their whakapapa is there. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Labour Party, I commend this bill to the House.
Dr. Lawrence Una.
I wonder, who is our New Zealand soap version of Alf Stewart? That would be that person that we can visualise who turns up in the event of emergency is that same voice on there. Like, do we have that person on Shortland Street?
Not sure.
No, or do we have that on another TV show that is made in New Zealand?
Dr. Opata back in the day, I think he was involved with, some of the what was it? He was a doctor abroad before he came on the show. This is going back quite far, but I think he
yeah,
was one of the voices of emergency at Shortland Street Hospital, wasn't he?
Yes.
I only know about Alf Stewart from those like memes like on YouTube, if you've seen those.
The Flaming Crows. he's got some very good he's got some good story taglines.
Mr. Doodleburger's Alf Stewart goes apeshit. I think this might be it. Alf Stewart, Slippery Gypsy. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know who's that New Zealand version, because like every time I keep like hearing the speeches, I think of the Alf Stewart who just comes out, who basically leads the search and rescue or whatever it is. Alf Stewart's there as the local civil defence person. Even though it is Australian home and away, I think we all get that reference.
No,
but even our people in our chat, and we mentioned the Alf Stewart reference with civil defence, you all know what we mean. And let's see if the chat goes, yes, Sam, we know.
No, I talk over everything that Kushla said there, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to again, you know, as opportunity party candidate, it's good to see parties doing what's right based on the evidence and what has obviously been reported back following a series of floods. I guess something not to diminish it, because if there's recent events, to just get on and make some of these important changes, because there may be events, you know, in 3-4 weeks' time. But really thinking about that long-term need and recognizing that, you know, climate adaptation, and I'm fortunate enough to be going to the ASAP adaptation conference. And also there'll be the Māori Adaptation Network there, as well as, you know, what does that kind of 5-year picture look like, and does this current legislation enable that, or is it just fixing the most recent
the interesting thing, what like Kushla sat there and said about the flooding of the Wairarapa, at the time the House was an urgency, and it's quite interesting that we've had another flooding event in the Wairarapa since then by the time we've broadcasted the show. And I think that was very ironic. Something that was said a few weeks ago is literally relevant this week. Yeah. Okay, let's see Lawrence Zunan.
Mr. Speaker, as we heard from both of the previous speakers, this is a bill that is important and very much needed, and the Green Party also supports this bill. And I want to first by acknowledging the Governor's Administration Committee for considering this bill, and for all of the members on that committee for doing a very thorough job of it. I also do want to acknowledge the Minister for the role that the Minister has played in managing some of the emergency response that I've seen, and I've seen the Minister firsthand going out to those affected areas. So I do want to thank the Minister for that. Like the previous speaker said, this is something that is facing Aotearoa New Zealand broadly, and it's really good to see that this bill have broadly the support of this House, and definitely the support of the Green Party. As mentioned before, the bill would replace the existing Civil Defence Emergency Management Act and then build this new legislative framework by this Act in terms of the 2023 government inquiry into response to the North Island severe weather events. And you know, in terms of the 2023 events, both what we have seen from that, both in terms of the Auckland anniversary flood that affected the areas such as Auckland Central, Epsom and Mount Albert more severely, as well as areas in over the shore, and the responses that MPs have had and on that, but also personally having relatives in East Coast and in Napier, Tokomato Bay, Talaga Bay, was going to those areas and seeing the ongoing impact to even to this day that Cyclone Gabrielle had in those kind of areas. And this is something that very much is facing Aotearoa New Zealand on the whole. And I think with that, Mr. Speaker, it's really important for us to address the first major issue that we have in this House, which is around climate change and how we are responding to both climate mitigation and also climate adaptation. And of course, this is something that the Green Party in particular is very interested in and would like to follow through, and having this kind of conversation with any government and with this on this bill and during the committee stage in particular. Now, the reason for that is because what we have seen is an increase. What we normally have seen to be once every 100-year events is now annually. And simply our local authority, simply our people, our communities, our society is not at this stage prepared to handle that kind of the level of frequency. Right now we're seeing more extreme weather patterns all around the world. Most recently with the heat waves in France hitting record high again. We're seeing that happening every year, which is declared that El Nino is here in Aotearoa, and the impact that potentially will have in the coming month. So climate change is absolutely an important focus when we're looking at the way we look at emergency management, of course, with all of the other natural disasters on the bill we have just spoken on regarding the Building Earthquake-Prone Buildings Amendment Bill, on other forms of natural disasters like earthquake. So then, with that kind of setting the scene, it's important then to ask, it's very well to have a bill such as this, but what is the level of resourcing that is needed to be able to undertake and actually do what is set out as a legislative framework to its full effect, and give credit to what we're trying to do here today. Because, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we have raised and we are concerned about is, for example, in Budget 2024, we did see that ring fence for the Climate Emergency Response Fund has been taken back, and nearly $1 billion has been wiped from that fund to subsidize for other parts of that budget. What we have seen is, that the Marae Resilience Fund is drying up, even though Marae plays such an important role in emergency response. And I want to give a specific shout out to the Marae that supported the local communities, our tourists, our visitors, not just Māori, but everyone who are in community in the extreme weather that we see, the climate change extreme weather we see earlier in the year in Bay of Plenty. So all of these is an important consideration as we progress this bill further through the House. What we have also seen is that the government has given record investment and record funding to defense, but proportionally, we have not seen the personnel, particularly when it comes to civil defense, receiving a proportional of that record increase in that defense. I think that's, again, we feel like if we're really talking about emergency management and emergency response, there is a little bit of imbalance in terms of what we see as a legislative framework and what we're seeing in action from a resourcing perspective. And also, another important aspect of that resourcing is what we have seen most recently here in Te Whanganui Atara in terms of the sudden flood that we saw only a few months ago that has also left many of our families here in Wellington in hardship. And I do want to give a special acknowledgement to our Green local MPs, Julianne Genter and Tamatha Poole, in the role that they played, as all electoral MPs do in the event of an emergency when it comes to emergency response. But one of the things we did see through a series of these emergency events that we've seen since the beginning of this year, we have seen record number of local state of emergency being triggered. Yet what we don't see is the corresponding response from, for example, the Ministry for Social Development, MSD, when it comes to civil defense payment. And they have to be constantly this battle with MSD to trigger civil defense payment, because if a local authority doesn't ask for it, it's not triggered. Whereas when people are in hardship, particularly when we're looking at a local state of emergency or national state of emergency, those civil defense payment should be automatically triggered rather than having for people to ask for that. And that all comes down to the package of what the Greens would really like to see when it comes to resourcing. Another area that I want to touch on, Mr. Speaker, is the disproportional effect that this will have on certain communities. And two communities that comes to mind in particular are our disabled communities and our seniors communities. As we have seen when it comes to Cyclone Gabrielle a few years ago, we noticed that when it comes to seniors, when it comes to disabled, there's no real good record, particularly for civil defense personnel, for firefighters, for those who are on the front line, to know if a particular family or people that they are evacuating actually require those kind of additional specialized support. So it's really good to see this particular bill having a specific mentioning and acknowledgement to the importance of those disproportionately affected community. But with that, with the kind of legislative framework, with the works of policy framework, again, it comes down to what sort of resourcing do we need? What kind of collaboration with Hapu, with iwi, with disabled communities, with seniors, with our elders, are we expecting to see to ensure that these sort of things are being addressed, and that we are not in a position where older people are left at home stranded because those people who are on the front line didn't know that they require additional support, wheelchair access, and all of those things. And finally, I think another important area when it comes to the idea of emergency management, an idea of schools and also communities being local hubs in the event of emergency management is absolutely crucial. We have seen school from a perspective that school has also recorded an incredible rate of needing additional support from the Ministry of Education as a result of school property damage, which also meant that our schools couldn't open as well. So this is, again, something that we really like to see of how we can build up schools' resilience as a local hub when we're looking at even more than what the government has put in this year's budget when it comes to solar panels on schools, as well as the ability for schools to have things like industrial-grade kitchen with, and the kind of school lunch broader school lunch availability that's done locally, and that way in the event of an emergency, the schools can also be a source or a hub for the local communities as well. But finally, I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, for me to actually acknowledge all of our electoral MPs here in this House and every single one of you for the role that you play in response to any form of extreme climate change weather events, whether you are Grant McCallum from Northland to Ingrid Leary from Taieri to David McLeod in the West and to Dana Kirkpatrick in the East and East Coast. I do want to thank, and also Kai Kuram, Stuart Nash, I want to thank all of you, and with that we support this bill.
I hope he got the right Stuart. It was Stuart Smith, not Stuart Nash.
Yeah.
Stuart Nash is the poster child for why we need an independent commissioner against the corruption. And it's actually good that Lawrence mentioned what actually happened in our community.
Isn't Stuart Nash now running with New Zealand First?
Yeah, he is.
They just know how to pick him. They know how to pick all the corrupt former Labour MPs.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So it's good that he's actually mentioned what happened in Berhampore and Newtown. And it's interesting that some of the places in there, like if we go to Lydet Street in Vogeltown, that's pretty much just basically in a shaky ground on what's actually happening on there. There's a particular property like number 50 is currently cannot be occupied because it's about to potentially slide down a cliff. The guy who lives at 52 is some guy in his 90s who basically, when things happened, the community literally basically just rallied right around it. It was quite interesting just to see how things actually went. And I remember that particular day, waking up in the morning to a text message from my landlord to say, hey, are things all right at the house? No one's flooded and all that. And I text her, go in my bed. It's like, yeah, it's perfectly fine, but I'm laying in bed at the moment. I go look at I look online, see the pictures, so I expect to have a flooded backyard, and it wasn't flooded at all. And basically, being one of the free social media people for the Newtown Residents Association, I knew we had to immediately act. And so we went through and basically was able to effectively make things happen on there. And I went around did live streams and that sort of thing. So the community knew what happened, even though I've got to admit, I was a little bit stupid when I went out there, reminding people to wear covered shoes while doing it all in jandals, because that was the first pair of shoes I could sit there and get to sit there and go out. But it was really interesting just to see how quick things happened. But also it was interesting to see, the fact that our councillors and our local MPs were pretty much on the ground, and including those that didn't represent our ward got out there.
Yeah, I think that's whilst we're kind of hearing this debate around that broader picture of legislation, I mean, in these times of emergencies, much of it is going to be the local residents and people acting. If I reflect on, because I was also somewhat involved with a little of a emergency response, only on the fringes, but it was very much the fire brigade that led a lot of their work. They were the first ones out the gate helping.
Well, their fire station, the Newtown fire station, got flooded in the same flood.
Wow.
Yeah. So try having our local emergency, headquarters was flooded. But the other interesting thing was how quick the water drained. So our drainage system, one of the things is quite interesting about it is we've got very good drainage. And so the fact that we hit capacity is unheard of in our area. So the fact did it. But it's something we had water that was waist deep at 5 a.m. in the morning. At 6 a.m. in the morning, it was back to just raining down the gutters. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some kind of reasonable points that was addressed from the Greens in terms of that kind of funding mechanism as well. And that's something that maybe I think actually was slightly proposed. I was looking up in the legislation in terms of the minister being able to basically sign off up to, I think, 100,000, and then the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have to support. Over 100,000 broader, it needs to go to Cabinet. But that seems to be urgent enough to be able to get that out the door, especially for those people that are acting the fastest, so the community, the middle.
And I wonder if the 100 grand, is that per area, per council?
Per incident.
Oh, per incident.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not necessarily.
So it's not necessarily a lot. I mean, that's probably just recovery food and hire of some places.
Oh, I can tell you 100 grand, if that was in Wellington, would be sitting there and sucked up as quick as anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas if you sat there and like deployed 100 grand into, say, Pongaroa, which is a rural community town of about less than 500 people in the rural what's of the was it Taurua district, but you know, basically the northern end of the Wairarapa electorate. 100 grand would sit there and build you a brand new road in context. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to now. Things went a bit interesting here. So we've got Camilla Bellich, because I do remember Camilla put a speech on this.
No one called Camilla Bellich.
Pleasure to take a call on the Emergency Management Bill number 2. Now, on behalf of the some party in the coalition government. However, Mr. Speaker, I am genuinely pleased to take this call because this is a portfolio that I previously held for the Labour Party for over 2 years, and I was pleased to work with people across the House, including with the Minister, and I want to acknowledge the Minister for his work. I was trying to think of all of the different emergencies that we happened to be attending at different times throughout the last 2 years, and there were quite a few. And it's always a stressful time for a community, but I know that having your leadership there has always been appreciated every time you've been there, and so thanks for being inclusive. And I know that it's a desire of the Parliament to have this bill pass, and also it has gone cross governments as well, because this is some of these changes we first suggested, I think, even as early as the some of the lessons learned in this bill came from incidents like the Christchurch earthquake. So this has been a long time coming, and we've had a problem really in New Zealand that we keep having disasters and we keep learning from them, and then we keep having to, we've been trying to change the legislation. So actually to get this here to second reading is a big achievement, and it was a pleasure to, I didn't make it through the whole select committee process, but I did hear all of the submissions, and it was really good to get it through that stage and hear the different submissions. And I think, I don't think a bill like this will ever be perfect, and you've heard from colleagues, including our spokesperson, Kushla, who I'm immensely proud to see in her role as emergency management spokesperson for Labour, because she's really passionate about, also because she's lived this. She's lived this in her community. She's lived through disasters, she's volunteered, she knows the pressure that comes from living in a community that is at the mercy of weather and climate change, and she gets in there and she mucks in, and she knows what it's like to be there on the ground. So I think she's really well placed to do this work. But yeah, there obviously will always be things that can be better with this bill. It's not exactly the same as the bill that was introduced, I think, by Kieran McAnulty or Kiri Allen under the last Labour government. But there are very similar aspects to it, and the tenor of most of the improvements has remained the same, but also, and very importantly, has learnt from the 2023 events that we had with Cyclone Gabriel and with the Auckland flooding. And, you know, this is it's an unusual area. I'm sure the Minister will agree that this couldn't be more serious, because we're talking about life and death. So getting it right is important, and we have to do everything we can to make it the response as safe as possible. But in the response, people are so, you never see a better side of New Zealand than when they're responding to an emergency, and people are hopeful, they're optimistic, they muck in, they help their neighbour, they will literally, I just think this is where New Zealanders really shine in these situations, and it's unfortunate that it's so often tinged with a great sense of loss, and often we see that sense of loss and that feeling once the original emergency has subsided. we see that sense of loss. And we have been, and the Minister, I want to have an upbeat speech because I'm really positive about this bill, but we have had some terrible disasters, and the Mawao situation with the slip was just so utterly tragic. I want to acknowledge Tom Rutherford there as well for his commitment to the response there. That was extremely difficult for the community, and I think something for the entire country to acknowledge the danger of slips, which, this is an area that I was working in, and to be fair, I feel that this is much more prominent now in my mind in terms of assessing the risks of disaster than it had been. In many ways, similar to how I hadn't fully appreciated the risk of flooding and rain until the Auckland floods as well. So we do learn from these situations, but we do have to stand alongside families, and being there was, I will never forget that service where the families were there. That was incredibly moving, and I think a real testament to the community in Mount Maunganui to come together to support those families, and just wanting to acknowledge, obviously, because whenever we talk about these tragedies, we have to acknowledge the families who are the ones affected, and we do what we can as elected members to support people. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill has changed a little bit since it was first introduced, and there are a couple of areas that the Select Committee changed that I think deserve mentioning. There have been a few changes that it's become apparent were needed as the bill was really progressing through the House, and one of those ones was enabling mayors to be sworn in early. Now, this is a really interesting one because we had a situation where mayors have a very important role in our emergency management system, leading the response. And we had a few situations where it wasn't quite clear, because it was during an election period, which mayor we were meant to be relying on. And that's not really okay, because in emergencies you do need a leadership structure, you need a hierarchy of when decisions are made, and you need those decisions to be made, if they are decisions that should be left for someone who's elected democratically, to be made by that democratic representative. So I think the ability to enable mayors to be sworn in actually might seem like an unusual thing, but actually because we have events so often in New Zealand, that probably will be something that does come up again. I think enabling people to be co-opted is also additionally an important aspect of making sure that all of the skills are there on an emergency management committee, because sometimes you might have some communities that do have that expertise, and there's more often than not, a wealth of expertise, but you might not have all the skills, and so enabling that is also really important too. There's also a slight change in requiring engagement and representatives of iwi Māori, and Kushla Tangere Manuel spoke to that earlier. This was an area which has changed a little bit since the bill that the last Labour government put in place. So the rules in relation to engagement with Māori are not as strong as they were under our proposal. So it's good to see that this proposal encouraging engagement is there as well. The response, and I don't think this is a political thing or anything that anyone would disagree with, the response from iwi Māori, marae and disasters is exceptional throughout the country, and it is built into the way that marae are set up, that for a country that experiences these events, they're set up perfectly to respond to the events. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's to do with the way that tikanga have evolved and the way that marae have evolved in order to deal with events over the time. And so we just see again and again marae, iwi and hapu standing up. And I think what we haven't been as good at in this House in the past, and I hope with this bill we can get better at it, is not just expecting that and saying thank you and moving on. It's actually resourcing those marae to be able to do, with their leadership, but actually respond in the best way that they can, the way they want to, with our support, and not only taking when we're in need, but actually supporting those marae to step up and do the job that they have always done in New Zealand, well before any of us were here, and will do well after all of us are gone as well. So that is a really important thing too. The issues around climate adaptation are important. This isn't a bill that solves all of the future issues associated with extreme events. There are issues which are still on the table, and I know the Minister's been working on a joined up system in relation to making sure that people in different parts of New Zealand, when there's a disaster in another area, can step up and use the same operating system, and actually we can utilise a much bigger workforce because of that common operating model. And that's tricky work, it's expensive. There are a lot of existing operating models, but I think that work is something that I would encourage the Minister to continue with, and I know he's has been doing that in the latest budget. The other issue is with climate mitigation. Of course, that's so interlinked with a lot of this emergency management work. There is more to do in that space, and we have to, acknowledge the fact as a country that we will be, especially with the confirmed El Nino weather pattern that we're having these systems and these issues again and again. And so this bill is a great step in the right direction. It was built on work of this government, this minister and previous ministers, and it will be something that future governments will work on in the future. And all we can do is take the best advice, do the best we can, and make sure we do everything we can to keep New Zealanders safe in emergencies. And I commend this bill to the House.
What do you think about Camilla's speech as the former chair of the Governance and Administration Committee who oversaw the oral submissions of this bill?
Yeah, a lot of good points there. I think the problem with speeches that kind of go on for a while like there is you forget what they say near the start, and it's but yeah,
you have to look at the Hansard. I got that I started feeling a bit yawny towards the end, but I think the speech itself was straightforward and sensible.
Yeah, it was kind of after hearing a number of the speeches, it's similar sentiment packaged up in a slightly different way, I think. So much of it, from what I heard, at least from my perspective, sort of was aware of some of these challenges, or it had been mentioned by the candidates. But it's really just good to see people taking the high ground in terms of just appreciating some of these kinks and just working through them. I mean, I reflect on being from Christchurch, right? And I can't help but not think about the things that I've experienced in my lifetime, from the earthquakes, the flooding in my hometown that's happened more recently in terms of the severe ones, the fires, a certain other sort of quite urban incident that was really terrible, quite different from a natural disaster, and many other things. So we are very prone, and again, just to support her point, and one that I reiterated earlier, is that role of Māori and marae. Many of our marae are coastal. It's where there is lots of slips. It's where there is lots of flooding and kind of that coastal erosion and challenges. So I just acknowledge them, and I do think the government can play a broader role in how they support and finance them post-disaster, because once the disaster's happening, central government kind of flies in and throws in some resource and all that, but that is actually lasting. And the Christchurch earthquakes took a very long time to recover from. I mean, there's still conflicts in the centre city where I'm like, what is going on here? Do something about it. And that was, 2010, 2011. So it is a lasting impact. And there's
what happened in Christchurch was quite. It took a ridiculous period of time to actually have changes. And this is something interesting. So you know how the North Island has lost an electorate because the South Island grew 2% more than the North Island at the last census. I'd say if it wasn't for the Christchurch earthquake, we potentially could have hit that point in the about 2000 and what would have been the 2016 census, which later became 2018, if that at that particular census could have been the one where either the electorate numbers stayed fixed at where they were or dropped one like we had happened this year. Yeah. I mean, partly also I believe there is also COVID relocation sat there and did that. And I think the next election, I think we'll have 8 Māori electorates, not the next election, at the next boundary redraw. But
do we know when that is?
Sorry, what did you say?
Do we know when that is?
Well, it was meant to be in 2028, but Paul Goldsmith has suspended that to after the new census that plans to happen in 2030, where we shift to an administrative census, which I believe, in principle is great, but you need a reset point every 5 or 10 years, because like administrative census works good when it comes to electoral boundaries. It works good for councils, but an administrative census needs to have a more accurate update point that is a lot more thorough than just relying on administrative data, such as like, here's a good example is, if you get recorded as a Māori, as a non-Māori in a hospital admission, that may upset the Māori, non-Māori statistics.
So potentially there would be 8 Māori electorates in the 2032 election?
Potentially, yeah. Actually, it could be 9 at the rate the more young people who are enrolling on the Māori roll directly, and it's been the biggest growth of the Māori roll now supersedes the general roll for those who are of Māori descent.
And does the number of general electorates change if that happens?
Yes, that does.
Like one,
it's fixed, right? It's
like one or two electorates less.
Yeah. So put it this way: in the 1996 census that came in effect in 1999, and in the 2002 census, in the 2001 census that came in effect in 2002, the Māori electorates went up by 1 per census boundary redraw. So in 1996 it was 5, 1999 it was 6, in 2002 it was 7, and it's sat at 7, I think, ever since.
Actually, here's a question for you, Eden, as a person from top. How would you guys feel about the number of seats increasing to potentially around 150 as opposed to 120?
Up to 150.
Your number's a bit conservative. I think 180.
I know there's been discussions around the kind of having is it an upper house? So having another mechanism.
That's another discussion.
Critical policy analysis and scrutiny can happen. I think this case, especially if this government has really highlighted what the former Prime Minister, what was his name from Labour? No, who is the professor of law who calls us the fastest lawmakers in the West?
Sir Geoffrey Palmer.
Yeah, Sir Geoffrey Palmer. I think that has been sort of highlighted in our area of wanting to clean up politics and having a wee bit more scrutiny, I guess, in some areas, or more of the scrutiny of the politicians, but part of it on the process. I think that there'll be options to be looked at, and just by increasing the number of the house is one way, but I think there's other approaches that we need to look at as well.
Yeah, my biggest issue with the upper house is, how do we get the elected part right? Because we, as a country, we don't have a federal system in place that divides us into geographical areas. So if we go by regional council boundaries and we have, say, a 60-seat upper house, that probably won't get the diversity that is required in order to actually make an upper house function well. Because you basically, in order to get a diversity that requires, and Australia's probably got the best one for it, is the fact that at every half Senate election, typically you have 6 senators that are up for election per state. Now, in order to have that happen in New Zealand, that's a good number, but the thing is, where do we put our geographical boundaries? And under that particular model, like Tasmania has 12 senators, 6 at each election, but it has like less than 1 million people. And they also, like in Australia, the average electorate size, with the exception of Tasmania, is 150,000 people per electorate. Is it 150? Or something. Whereas Tasmania, it's like 75,000.
By the way, Sam, I will say your number of 180 is a bit more accurate than mine because the New Zealand population in 1996, when we made it, 120 MPs was about 3.732 million.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's 5.361.
Yeah.
So if the number of seats were equal to like the population from that time, it would be around 172 at the moment.
Yeah.
From my math.
Yeah. You'd also need to change the South Island population quota of 16 seats, which is what it currently is. But I mean,
we could. It's interesting, like the way you go about this.
Well, I would say if you have to do it, you have to do like a 30-year plan to progressively increase the number of seats in Parliament by a fixed number every census or every boundary redraw cycle and up the number of seats in the House for like over a 30-year period. So you don't have that sudden jump of an extra 60 politicians. Like that's not constructive either. But it should have what should be known as a projection growth plan to increase representation, because we've been stuck at 120 since the introduction of MMP.
Yeah, which to me just makes like MPs less and less accountable if they have bigger and bigger constituencies.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at Dakota Ferris. I mean, like his electorate, stretches from like, basically from like La Hutt.
It's the entire South Island and Wellington.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I don't know if Dakota has a private pilot's license, but I think the best way you could serve the electorate is by flying and assess the plane.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the candidates contesting that seat, not Takuta, but it is a lot of work to get around and visit all those communities, and ultimately, it's almost a bit of a poison chalice. Once you do get in there, you can't be everywhere. I mean, you have all these communities kind of expecting reasonable demands of you, and it's like you're effectively half the country.
Mind you, it is just that big because of like the amount of people on the Māori roll.
Yeah, in that area. And also, because then it also flows onto the other effect that with that, the MPs who have some of the highest air travel expenses are those on the Māori electorates, like Debbie Naruapaka, Rawiri Waititi, Takuta Ferris, Marumeno Kapakingi have the highest air travel bill, but their electorate is like 4 times the size of a general electorate. Like the biggest general electorate in the South Island is West Coast Tasman. The biggest North Island general electorate is the Wairarapa electorate. It's, and like the Wairarapa electorate, you can at least drive from one end to the other of it in about 4 hours. You can't, how long does it take to sit down there and drive from La Hutt with 2 ferries all the way to Oban? You're looking at 2 days.
All the way down to the Stewart Island, technically.
Yeah. It's a very different, it's like a completely different thing there. It's interesting to find out that Hannah Ruff and Maipi Clark's airfares actually aren't that ridiculously huge. That's something I found quite interesting, but I think that's because her electorate of Hauraki Waikato is the fact that she's got a choice of like 2 airports to go into. So she can effectively serve her electorate from the Hamilton or from the Auckland airport. Whereas, like, if you look at Debbie, she starts serving her electorate by car as soon as she reaches the city of Porirua, and she's still serving until she reaches Tikawiti. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to call it a night, considering I don't think we're going to get through those speeches, and some of them are going to be a bit longer.
Before you go, I've got a quick update on the Count Binface race.
Oh, yes.
I've got a video I'll send you on Discord that you might want to play. It's like a minute long.
Oh, you can always send it through on the private channel restream.
Oh, okay.
There is a thing in there that you can send it, because that will get quicker than me.
There you go. From Lord Buckethead, who's another one of these joke candidates.
No, it was meant to have been the same
earlier one, right? When there's Lord Buckethead around, it was during the Boris Johnson.
Yep.
Time,
Yeah,
right?
I remember John Oliver brought him on.
I don't really sign in onto Twitter, so unfortunately I won't be playing that.
I might be able to do it.
Can you hit share screen on your one?
Screen share.
There we are. You've got control.
Screen. Okay, here we go.
Meat bags of earth. Many of you have been asking if I will run in the Clacton by-election. After consulting my intergalactic think tanks, I have discovered that one of the candidates is an absurd parody whose only goal is to ridicule and undermine British democracy. There is no place in politics for pathetic, unfunny charlatans. That is why I, Lord Buckethead, have decided to endorse the only serious candidate in the Clacton by-election. I speak, of course, of my intergalactic counterpart, Count Binface, whom I hereby heartily endorse in the Clacton by-election. Humans of Clacton, don't waste your vote on a comedy candidate. Like Nigel Farage himself, it's not big and it's not clever. Vote Binface. Democracy itself is at stake.
Went off Nacho Night.
Well, it's good to see people having fun with politics. It doesn't all have to be boring.
Well, it's been suggested maybe we need a New Zealand
serious candidate in that by-election. He's the serious candidate in that by-election. Nigel Farage is the joke candidate.
Okay, we got super chat from Lord Alex's super chat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Except what I'll do, I've had a couple questions, and I'm actually going to one of the disability conferences in Christchurch, so I'll be getting feedback. Yes, I think that's something that I can put forward to our policy team. I think it makes sense. I understand early on in this government's reign, they pulled back a lot of the funding that is crucial for people with disabilities to basically live their lives and have a variety of different activities that they get them by. So that's something that I can pass on to the policy team for sure.
I would be interested to hear a bit more about opportunities, foreign policy.
Yes.
Are you the right person to ask?
About a wee bit. It's not an area that we have. We're very much focusing on the domestic economy rather than foreign influence. If there are quite large issues, I'm sure we'll respond, but we are quite a small team and it's one that we get a lot.
I can respect that. I'm just also of the opinion that, like, you know, if you guys are the kingmaker in this election and you end up helping form the next government, you would be part of the decision making in that, would you not?
Yeah, absolutely. And all, you know, they're working through some bottom lines. I think there are some quite concerning things happening in that sort of broader foreign affairs space that I think is really important, not just trade. I mean, I think trade broadly, there's good bipartisanship support in terms of that broader scope of, and I think MFAT did some quite good work on this, publishing the kind of state of foreign affairs. And I think that'd be really useful basis points of some of our positioning. And especially with thinking about what's happening in the US and other regions, I think we will kind of respond to that at some point, but I can't say it's one of our immediate priorities.
The genocide in Gaza has been.
I was about to say something along those lines.
Yeah. To me, like my view, we should at bare minimum recognize Palestinian statehood, but I think we should also go beyond that in sanctioning Israel and kicking out the Israeli ambassador.
Yeah, it's something we haven't put out a position on yet, and
I'll be interested to hear what your position is when it does come out, because it's a moral. To me, it's a moral bottom line. Like this is one of the key moral questions of our time, to me.
Yeah. Okay, the bills that we get you to put in submissions on, they're closing very, very soon. Oh, heck. And that didn't end up in the right place. There it is. Okay, the first bill, the Conservation Amendment Bill, closes tomorrow, the 13th of July. The Climate Change Response Tort Liability Amendment Bill closes tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yeesh.
The Fair Trade Amendment Bill closes on the 16th of July. The India Free Trade Agreement Legislation Amendment Bill closes on the 19th of July. and it's a very interesting talk about kiwi fruit. The Community Magistrate Legislation Amendment Bill closes on Friday the 14th of August. The Environmental Reporting Amendment Bill closes on Thursday the 20th of August. And the Regulatory System Social Security Amendment Bill number 2 closes on the 20th of August. So, that's it for the Order Paper podcast. If panelists like to stay for post-show chats, feel free to sit there and do that. And we'll be back here next Sunday more from the Order Paper podcast. Anything else from our panelists that they'd like the world to know before we go?
Just thanks for having me. Good once again to meet you virtually, Eden.
No, thank you all for listening. Feel free to reach out around sort of opportunity party policy. My response has been a touch delayed in some areas, but and just acknowledge both of you and Sam. I think the role of people being able to provide feedback in those bills that you just shared in that consultation is really important to encourage people to do that, although it is very tiring.
Sit there and take a look. Alex, who was our panelist last week, is going to be putting a submission on that bill.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, let's roll the closing credits.
Thank you for watching The Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/It's in the Ballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot Productions. Live